Welcome to another edition of Seahawks Forever, powered by BetUS, or should I say, welcome back to another edition of Seahawks Forever. Had some time off. Hope you all are well. Got here just in time, though, for episode 2 of season 3 of the John Schneider Show on Seattle Sports 710. He started doing this 2 years ago. We don't hear a lot from him the rest of the year, but this gives us a little bit of a peek behind the curtain during draft season. He does this through the draft, and then he kind of disappears again for a while. Obviously, he can't share everything and every part of the process, but last week, there was enough compelling information coming out and enough opinions around what he had to say about the offensive line, how he views it as a weakness, how they have a plan to attack it. But there were some things he didn't touch on last week as well. And so what I did last week, and I'm going to do all throughout this season, is react blind and live to this show in real time. So I've spent the better part of the last half of this day doing two things: unpacking and trying to avoid any information or opinions or quotes coming from the show, because I want to be able to react to it real time with you. So let's do that. Reacting to John Schneider in his second show of the season. Up next.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Well, the NFL season might be over, but all the other pro sports are rocking and rolling for the next 6 months. And if you sign up for a new account on BetUS today, they will still give you this phenomenal deal, at least through the end of this month. 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposits using the promo code YouTube150. All right, guys, how are you? How you been? I didn't miss too much while I was gone. You know, some Seahawks finalized their coaching staff. Rick Dennison, it's been rumored for weeks, brought on as a senior assistant and run game coordinator. I'll talk about the coaching staff on another episode coming up soon, but my goodness, if there was any concern on your part that they weren't going to pay enough attention to fixing the run game, I'm not so sure that any staff in the league has as many coaches with run game in their title and with those responsibilities. So that coaching staff now finalized. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell for notification of future episodes. All the other ways to support me and the channel are listed down below and linked in the description. Before we get into this, let me just say, I don't pat myself on the back too often, do I? And I don't deserve all the credit. I have a wonderful, wonderful partner. But we made a 24-hour drive straight through in 26 hours. And as my lovely mother asked, why did it take you so long? We only stopped for gas, snacks, to go to the bathroom, and we did nap once. We stopped at a rest area, tried to nap, only lasted about 45 minutes, got back on the road. So we powered through. And yeah, so if you haven't heard, what you're going to get for the next 3 months is full-time content from me. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show, but let's get right into this. So this is the John Schneider Show, second one of the season. He sits down with Bob and Dave on Seattle Sports 710. They pepper him with questions. They're pretty good. Like, I think they ask the hard questions, and I think they're in touch with what their viewers and listeners want them to ask. And they only have about 20 minutes, right? These shows are usually between 20 and 25. And so I can only assume that that's part of the deal, right? That Schneider said, hey, I'll give you 20 minutes. I don't want it to go on too long. So you can't ask him everything every single week. So last week in particular, a lot of time was spent talking about the Super Bowl and what he saw there. And of course, questions about the offensive line and the trenches. Didn't talk about Geno Smith, didn't talk about DK Metcalf, didn't talk about any specific moves or potential moves other than to say, you know, it's that time of year where they have to do some things with the salary cap, and they're working on that and trying to make the best, smartest moves that they can. So let's see what he has to say this week. Let me take this all the way back to the beginning. It always starts with a little bit of a blurb, a little intro, a teaser, where they play a little part of a soundbite that's deeper in the show with some music on it, and then they get right into the interview. So let's bring John into the show here, and let's go.
Are we going to overpay a guard and lose out on a defensive tackle?
No, so they're going to talk about it again.
No, we'd rather pay the player that we think is a better talent.
Hey, the big news yesterday was the salary cap that is being estimated. They don't have the exact number out there, but a two-part question. A, did you kind of have an idea of general area it was going to fall in? And B, how much does that help you being one of the teams that's currently over the cap?
Yeah, we'll take anything we can get, right? Yeah. Joey Lane was thinking about, we were about 2 under, which is good for us, the estimation. So, yeah, so we budget off of that, we kind of do our planning off of that. So, yeah, he was really close.
So, John,
and we'll still find out exactly, what it is.
Yeah. So you always have an idea, though, right?
Yes.
Generally.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, do you try to get it like right on the nose? What's the closest you've ever gotten?
Well, we had some insider stuff for a number of years. So Matt Thomas had a couple great connections. So we were kind of dialed in for, several years. I can't get into it. Sorry. I wish I could tell you.
Yeah.
This show's so amazing. I can't say exactly what I want to say.
We understand.
He loves to point that out. 2 things. I'm glad they brought this up, although it sounds like they're ready to move on. So this is just, and you can't talk about it too much. A lot is made, and I saw a lot of this earlier today on social media, out of how the rising salary cap, and every year we seem to hear this. Oh, it exceeded projections and expectations. It's higher than they expected it to be by a couple $1 million, right? And then there's always a lot of back and forth between, oh, that's great. Teams that have some salary cap issues like the Seahawks, it helps them, right? They were about 12 over. Now they're 6 over. So instantly, just like that, their books look better. But then somebody always makes the point too, that, hey, this is going to increase the value of free agents, unrestricted free agents, right? They know the cap's going up, and so they're going to try and take advantage of that and get better deals, and they might get more expensive. It all equals out, all of it. Yeah, maybe they can demand more money because they know the cap's going up, but teams will account for it. Teams can afford more. They're not going to change their priorities or their approach in free agency because of this additional money in the salary cap over and above what they were expecting. It's just, to me, it's a no, not a no-brainer. It's a non-starter. It means nothing. Also, the other thing I want to point out, I always find it fascinating. He has his phone in his hand. Well, now he's set it down, and that might be smart because you saw the last camera angle and he was holding it up like this. You could see the top half of his phone on the camera. Like, what if a pop-up notification? Maybe he has notifications off, although that wouldn't be smart. He might miss a great trade offer, right? But what if something popped up, right? And it was like a GM from another team. That would be fun. All right, let's get back into it.
We understand that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got done with the meetings and excited to, get a haircut, get cleaned up, and head down to the combine and meet with all the teams, all the agents, and all the prospects. And it's always a grinder. But
by the way, on that note, just a heads up, I may not cut my hair for a while because I don't have to now. Just saying.
It's we learn a lot down there, so we're ready to go. Got our board together, and yeah.
Well, I feel like every year you add something.
He mentioned this a few years ago. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, where he was on one of these shows before the draft, and he was talking about how they had changed their process at a certain point. I think about midway through his time with Pete Carroll, when they put their draft board together before the combine. They used to not do it until after. And the reasoning on that was, obviously not all the data's in. Obviously they still have information to get. But just based on everything they've done in the year prior up until February, they put their board together based on what they know now. And what he said that does is it gives them an idea when they go to Indianapolis of they can be a little bit more defined in what they're looking at and a little bit more focused in what they're looking for, because they already have an idea based on their information so far about how these guys rank. And so if a guy flashes and shows him something that they didn't see on tape athletically, they can go, okay. And then they come back, they have meetings again after the combine, and they go, let's bump that guy up. Let's raise his grade because now we saw something that was different than the information we'd had so far. I find that interesting.
Because it's gotten more and more like 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they didn't have, you had like a coach would go visit a guy and then he'd come back and tell you about it.
Yeah, right.
Now you've got all of this stuff. So is it getting like more and more technical and you get more and more information each and every year? Or is it constantly changing?
It's constantly changing. I would say, we've leaned heavily on, the analytics portion with Patrick Ward and Becca in there, which is is fun because we give them a lot of grief. They have a blast with it because they do like a hype score basically. So they say the guy's going to be predicted to be drafted in the second round. It's basically like taking like every mock draft you could ever think of, and they throw it in the computer and whatever, and then they say based on our critical factors what we like. Which I can't get into.
Yeah, right.
They put that in there, and then they say, we value this player as a 5th round player or a 2nd round player, and so, which is great because it's this new way of kind of like, okay, wait, so, guys have gone to the school, they've done all the research, they've talked to all their sources and all the coaches and the trainers and the equipment people and everything, and then now we have this other view that's, and they're like, hey, I think this guy's a 2nd round player. Okay, great. That's cool.
So
then you have the analytics.
That's analytics to you.
And then, no, that's the scouts, right?
Okay.
And then you have the analytics people that are like, well, we think he's a 5th round player. So there's always kind of this, hey, wait a second now. But it's fun. It's we have a blast in there. And it's fun. So like, Mo's in there as well, player development, Soup Campbell, Mo Kelly, Soup Campbell, player development. Georgia head of security is in there with us, and then all the scouts, and we plow through it, man. I'm just really proud of everybody.
Before he gets into giving credit to everybody in his organization, which he always does, he's very, very, very good about that. I am kind of blown away by what he just said, and it'll be really interesting to get on social media now and kind of comb through Twitter after I'm done recording this and see if there's any reaction to this. This is a nugget. He literally just told us that they take mock drafts. Every mock draft you can get a hold of or that you can think of, I think is what he said. Plug it into a computer, come up with a consensus, basically, like a consensus big board. Who is that? Is it Arif Hassan? He does such a great job every year. He takes like 20 big boards from all the big analysts and puts them together for a consensus. I started working on that with Bryce Coots a few weeks ago, and I'm going to go back to that. That's kind of how I came up with my baseline for like a top 100 players. And then I can go through and start moving guys around based on what I see. And then he said they take that. So that gives him an idea of what the general consensus, right? Or the mind's eye of all the people that do this all the time, some as a living, some just for passion. And they plug that into the computer and then they add some of their scoring system to it based on what they know so far. Again, the interviews they've done, the tape film they've studied, and the scores that the scouts have given them based on the football stuff. And then they adjust it again, right? So they add all that in and then they go boop and they hit enter and it recalculates it. That's unbelievable to me. So now that would indicate to me that when he talks about, going out and finding mock drafts, it's got to be a 7-round mock draft for the most part, right? I suppose you could still plug in just the 1 and 2 and 3 round mocks that some of these guys do, the McShays and the Bruglers and the Jeremiahs. But does that mean that Rob Staten, that they're pulling his information? He just came out with his new complete 2-round mock today. Friend of the show, Rob Staten. He'll be back again soon. Are they plugging that stuff in there? Are they plugging Walter football 7-round mocks in there? Because kind of blown away by that whole idea.
Maybe
I should start doing 7-round mock drafts.
I think I told you last week, like we have a nice language and a nice tempo we can go at now because we've been together so long, and it's neat to see a lot of the younger guys too. Like we talked about Jack Green last week and Azam and Harrison, and these guys are just, they're learning quick and they're doing a great job. It's fun. It's just fun to watch everybody interact, grow, and to finally put that thing together. It's basically a blank board, right? And now we, have a ton of names up there. So now we're on to the next phase. So now we have questions on all those players. We'll spend the next several weeks trying to get those questions answered. Months, I guess.
So this is the point in the process where it sounds like, to me, they don't eliminate anyone. They don't get into character red flags or any of that stuff quite yet. They just, it sounds like what he's saying is they just go based on their pure football evaluations, what they see on tape, what they saw at the Senior Bowl, what they've seen in the brief interviews that they've had so far at the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, Polynesian Bowl, all the All-Star Circuit stuff, and put a big board up. Then they start going, okay, injury concerns, medical concerns, red flags. There's already, I posted on Twitter today, there's a couple of I don't have to withhold the names. There's a lot of information out there that you can find with a simple Twitter search or Google search about James Pierce from Tennessee. And I hadn't heard anything about this kid until today, Mike Green from Marshall, who had the spectacular Senior Bowl week, 17 sacks, led the nation last year, big time, powerful edge rusher out of Marshall, about some really, really bothersome things in his past, both at high school and in college. So then they start going through, once they get confirmation of those things, form their own opinion, talk to the kids themselves. I'm sure they'll meet with both those players. I would imagine they met with Jalen Carter 2 years ago, who most people assumed, and probably rightly so, that wasn't going to be on the Seahawks draft board because of some of the character concerns with him, but they still met with him, right? You got to confirm that for yourself. People do grow and change. You can't just eliminate somebody because of something you read online. So they'll find out for themselves. And then they start taking names off the board, or he doesn't fit our length specs. His arms are too short for the position, right? He's just not athletic enough. The lateral agility isn't what we require from that position. So they put it all up there based on everything he just told you in the process. Then they start taking guys away.
Months, whatever.
You're like a proud papa. You're like, look, look, I taught them. Look at them.
No, that's not
doing it on their own.
No.
Walking.
I'm the guys. I mean, I'm just really proud of Trent and Willie and Nolan and all these guys that have really coached these people up. It's awesome. It's a really cool process to see.
Hey,
I wish you guys could sit in there. Really, it's pretty fun. I told the trainers, I was like, they're like, yeah, what position you guys on? I'm like, just come on up, sit in the back and listen. It'd be kind of fun.
You can't say that to Dave and I.
I could, but I wouldn't mean it.
It'd be a big joke, but yeah. Just back to the salary cap situation for a moment. When you say you're within $2 million, we still need
estimating.
Estimating where it's going to be, and we still need to see where the final number is. But in that instance, if it's higher than you thought, and hey, now we've got $4 million more than we thought we'd have, do you look at that as the difference between this guy may have been a cap casualty, but now we've got this money? Or is it, hey, now this is something that'll be targeted? Do you have
really
plans in mind for that?
Great question. And we usually find that out at the combine. We'll find out exactly okay, what are other people looking at? Other free agents, okay, they want to make X, right? They want to make this guy, we thought, he wants to make, player X wants to make $8 million, right? And then, we find out, okay, well, actually he's going to make 4 by the end of the weekend. We kind of say, hey, okay, the agent may come back to us and be like, hey, this guy's not going to have the market that we thought. And then you can say, okay, well then maybe there won't be another cap casualty, right? But every honestly, every $1 million is huge for us, right? And so you're just constantly moving this puzzle around. So we're trying to decide if we can keep you both, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe we have to let Dave go. I mean, sorry, Dave. I didn't mean like that. He's just sitting right here. Easy fodder. Easy fodder.
He can't respond. Yeah. That's the beauty.
So, but so we'll find that we usually it doesn't affect it as much as you would think. But there are surprises every year at the after we get done talking to everybody, and you can say, okay, well, if that individual wants to make $10 million, we're out of that. So we're gonna have to pivot and go over here.
Hey, I've talked.
So March 12th. the legal tampering period starts, right? I think that's the date. March 14th, players can sign. During the legal tampering period, no agreements are supposed to be reached between players and teams. And yet, on the 12th and the 13th, deals will leak out. They just haven't been signed yet. So what he just described is tampering. Like, we've known this for a long time, that teams get a better idea at the combine about what players might be available, whether a certain player might have interest in them, whether one of their own players wants to stay and what they're looking for, and kind of then they can go back to their offices, and then they have about 2 weeks before free agency starts to kind of take that information and figure out what they want to do with it. He basically, I've never heard it stated that plainly. He literally said, he almost interrupted the question and said, we'll figure that out at the combine because then we'll know.
About, before that, every year you learn something new and you write things in your notebook and all of that. But at one point, you consulted Theo Epstein.
Yeah.
So you're talking to guys from other sports, and tell us about that one in specifically, like what did you learn from that? What do you want to know?
So that was those guys, they were, just won the world championship, and, we were trying to build our analytics department, and it was just a best practices thing. They wanted to understand our background research. At the time we were kind of known as like the grit group. We were kind of ahead of like, it was just I don't know, like that we were edgy, right? We had those grit guys. And so it was really like, they wanted to find out, like, how much, like, what are you looking at? What are the questions? What's the research? How do you go about it? Like, what's the best practice, for the character portion and learning who the person is and the competitor and the brain and all that kind of stuff. And then we were just Patrick Ward had just got here, and we were trying to build our analytics group out, and they were just, I literally sat in their kind of press box, their like general manager's box with him during a game. And he's like, could call down to the manager. I was like, well, that would never happen in the National Football League, but they're so heavily driven by analytics that it was really cool. We just learned a ton from those guys, and like what their draft board looked like, and how they built theirs. So yeah, it's fun. When Sam and I went to New Zealand, spent time with the All Blacks and the rugby team. We went about, I would say, 6 or 7 years ago now. And we learned a ton with those guys too, in terms of player development. So they, like, one of the teams had like 32 players on their team, and they had like, I think it was 6 player development people. So like a military person, former player, team clinician, chaplain. And so we're thinking to ourselves, learning from that best practices was that whole trip we went on was like, wait a second, we'll have like 120 players through here. We need to build up our, we have one guy doing it, with Mo. We're putting a lot on Mo, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to build out that department and, understand what all the players need in different areas. But so you're constantly it was fun. We spent time with the America's Cup team. They were hosting the America's Cup, and those guys were a blast. They can drink a lot of beer, those guys. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But that was fun. So they were like, it's like doing more with less, and what their rules are. I never knew. Every year not every year, but when they host it, you decide what the parameters are for the boat, like the length and the depth of the keel and all that kind of stuff. So, and what kind of sails you can use, and it was fascinating. So just kind of like, you're just constantly looking for. We're chasing edges, is what
there you go.
Coach Mike says. So yeah, we're just chasing edges, Dave.
Hey, you brought up how you might look at a guy and feel like, hey, he's a second round pick, but your analytics guys say, we have him as a 5th round.
Yeah.
How do you? I'm a big baseball fan.
Yeah.
And analytics are certainly a part of it, but to me, there are people that are all or nothing. Here's what the analytics say, and that's the truth, and anything outside of that isn't. And,
right.
And people stop using their eyes.
Right.
I think there's got to be a healthy balance, and baseball, I feel, relies on analytics much more, certainly. Right. But how do you balance what your eyes are telling you and what you hear from a player versus what the analytics are saying, if there is that big of a difference?
It's really, at the end of the day, taking in all the information you could possibly take in, and then just going with what to your point, what your eyes and your gut tell you. And that's just through experience and building out, the library over the years of players and people that I've studied. And so to listen to as many people as you possibly can, whether it is analytics, or it's an equipment person, or a trainer, or a coordinator, or a running back coach, or
or what the game tape is
exactly, and then bringing that all the way back to what exactly at the end of the day, like, what is it? Like, this is how we envision the player. And then in the draft, it's all about trying to figure out like how to acquire the player. So yeah, and the analytics part of it is, we had Rashad Penny's not, is retired now, so I can tell you the story, but I the first time I studied him, I was basically like, well, level comp isn't very good, and he's got these huge lanes that he's running through, and he's big, and he's super fast, right? Like, really explosive. And so I had kind of graded him down a little bit. Patrick and his group, the analytics guys, were like, he's actually the number one running back on our board after contact. And I was like, I don't I disagree with that. Like, we got into it a little bit. I was like, nah, I don't see that. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go back. So I went back and just did it. There's actually, you can sort this now on the computer. It's amazing to be able to do that and say, okay, let's see all this guy's all of his runs, that are behind line of scrimmage. I forget what it's called, but it's basically like his productive runs after contact behind the line of scrimmage. And it's just, you just watch all those plays and you're like, I didn't see that. So you can have an opinion going in just based on a level of competition or what you've seen, or if it's, you've seen them play on TV and you have a preconceived notion of what the player is before you sit down and actually study him. Right. And so it's like, whoa, that's a great, I wouldn't have thought that until I sat down, and that's like one of the catches. It's like they're basically they're not saying, okay, they're saying, the analytics people are saying, this is how we see this player based on past performance, all that, just everything that goes into the formula that they put together, right, over years, and he keeps working on it. It's amazing.
Wow. So that's new information. He literally told us right there that that's a story he couldn't tell until now. And some of you are probably out there right now cursing the analytics department for passing that on to him, because I know that the Penny pick was obviously a very polarizing one at the time. Seahawks didn't have a second round pick that year. They had Chris Carson. There was a thought that running back wasn't a need. There were other bigger needs, especially with the fall off after that pick, not having another pick till the third. But this also touches on something I was talking to some people about today, and something that I believe very, very, very strongly about scouting. If you think you love a player, you think this player can do no wrong, he's one of your favorite players in the draft, go back and watch him again and try to find reasons not to like him. And then take a player that you don't think you like, but that everybody else seems to, and ask yourself why you don't like him. That's spooky, trying to get on the show. I don't know if you can hear. And then try to find reasons. Force yourself to try to find reps that make you go, oh, now I see what people are saying about him. Somebody got to me on a mock draft I did 2 weeks ago. If you remember this one, I think it was the All Senior Bowl 7-round Seahawks mock draft, where I had him taking Shamar Stewart in the first round. He was the most dominating player in Mobile on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then left after that because he had done enough work, didn't want to risk getting hurt or whatever. But he only had 1.5 sacks last year, 4.5, I think, in his career. And so someone came at me and said, they were rude, and they said, stupid pick, you're an idiot. He, that would be a terrible, terrible pick. And then every other mock draft you see, Shamar Stewart's going in the top 20, top 25. So to use that as an example, if you don't think Shamar Stewart's very good, go back and watch 2 or 3 of his games. Or, okay, don't do that much. I know that was asking a lot. But just go back and watch it and only try to find reasons to like him. Only find good reps. basically John Schneider just admitted that he didn't like Rashad Penny, didn't see it with him, thought it was too easy for him. It wasn't a true indicator, the game tape, of his talent. And then his analytics people caused him to look again. They end up taking him. Now, his career didn't turn out the way that we all wanted it to, certainly that John Schneider wanted it to because of injuries, but we saw when he was healthy how good he was. And so, during those times when he was healthy, and we saw some of the things he could do, it proved the analytics people right. And so I think it's big of John here to admit that he's willing to second guess himself and take other people's opinions, which I think any good manager in any walk of life should be able to do. I think when we get into trouble is when we have blinders on, right? And we only look for information that confirms our priors. And I see this more this time of year than ever. And I see it from people that don't do the work. If someone's done the work and they disagree with me on a player, fine. We can have that debate. And sometimes I'll go back and watch a player again. What am I missing? Because all these other people are saying, yeah, but he's not good at this or he's not good at that. I think that's a really important area. And to think that NFL GMs do that, good ones, but some of y'all on Twitter don't, is kind of interesting to me. We're about halfway through. So before we get back to it, let me do this. This show is once again sponsored by the fine folks at Doer. And just take a guess. Take a guess what I wore on the drive from Seattle to Arizona. What I wore when I was moving. What I wore, because here's the thing about Doer. They're so comfortable. These stretch performance jeans I'm about to show you, they make other stuff too, but I like to focus on these because I've tried a bunch of their clothing out, but these have blown me away. They're literally a game changer, a life-changing piece of apparel. They're perfect. They're so comfortable, 20% stretch, breathable, antibacterial, sustainable materials. So when you're moving, you're packing boxes, you're lifting things, you're cleaning, they're super comfortable and light, but they're durable too. So you don't have to worry about getting them dirty, getting down on your knees and cleaning and scrubbing. They're great for driving, super comfortable for a long drive. But then guess what? As soon as we got here, we went out and had some dinner, and we went to a place that it was like upscale casual, right? And I could still wear them there. And right now, you can get 20% off plus free shipping on your first order from Doer by going to shopdoer.com/forever. www.shopdoer.com/forever for 20% off your first order. Doer is built for doing. All right, let's get back to this. The second half, a little bit less than half left of the John Schneider Show on Seattle Sports 710.
He's a fascinating person. You guys should have him on the show sometime. Anyway, no, but
what do you think, Dave? Did we get that? No, he says
Dave shaking you off.
No, but no, very talented man. But anyway, it's they're projecting out what the player is going to be, but it's also basically like an alert, right, to what some of our blind spots might be based on those preconceived notions that I was saying.
Hey, I was just looking at the coaches. I mean, I think there was like 8 or 9 when I played, and now there's like 25 to 30 or whatever. But the guys
34, but who's counting? Yeah, no,
is that right?
No,
yeah,
I'm not sure what it is right now.
No,
I mean, it's about 30. Yeah,
but it's kind of cool. But the guys that you like, Rick Dennison, who I know from Denver and everything, those guys, I feel like there's it's at an all-time high where coaching is a premium, because like, look at Sam Darnold. Like, somebody spoke the right words to him, right? I mean, is that kind of how you look at it? And is that why you hire those guys like Rick Dennison, where it's like, this guy's an expert, he's had success, and it's not so much about his scheme or anything, but it's how he coaches it and what he says to the player.
Exactly. And you're on it. We talked last week about the development portion too, acquisition, obviously identification. Excuse me. Very important, but being able to develop people and then work with the individuals that can accentuate people's skills or help them with their deficiencies, and it's so important. And they call him Rico, I guess. So Rick Dennison is a nickname. Is that? Did you know that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
He's entered in my phone that way.
Okay, it is really okay. But and then Justin Outen, we Mike hired him as well, and he's former center. So offensive line emphasis, really, right? So,
here we go.
Rick Dennison, Justin Naughton, and John Benton, and those guys. There's three really strong teachers right there.
Hey, it's interesting what people pull from these conversations and becomes the big talking point.
Okay.
Last year it was when we talked guards.
Yeah.
And you had made a statement that guards were often overdrafted and overpaid.
Yes.
We've seen the team have trouble at that spot.
Yes.
It looks like an area of need.
Yes.
Has your philosophy changed on that at all, or more?
Before he even answers this, I'm glad we're getting into this again. Like, they're going to keep hammering it because it's what the viewers and the listeners want to hear, right? I pay attention to the details. Try to let go of what you think he meant when he said it before. Try to let go about how poorly you think they've evaluated interior offensive linemen over the last 4 or 5 years. He's not getting defensive here. He's not saying, well, wait a minute. We like Christian Haynes and Satawa LeMay. We've drafted a bunch of guys inside. He's saying, yes. Here's Bob saying, it's been a problem. You said this. Yes. It's been a problem. It still wasn't good. Yes. Let's see where this leads.
Morphed
at all based on what the experience has been?
Well, I would say that it's the statement, I guess, is really, it's not a level of importance. It's extremely important. It's highly valued, but we still to this day, because of the dearth of talent at the position, will overpay at that position and will overdraft at that position. And we've been guilty of it, and we probably will be guilty of it in the future as well. It's just based on a level of talent. So it's not. It's a position that everybody is looking for, right? And
I know I touched on this a little bit last week, so I won't go deep into it again. But I think he's adding more context here. He's adding more clarity to this here, and it's what I've been saying for a year. Is I don't think y'all interpreted, or many of you interpreted what he said last year properly. And now I'm glad they gave him another chance to clarify it. He's not saying they're overdrafted and overpaid because I don't think they should be drafted that high and I don't think they deserve to be paid. He's saying because there's always a shortage of good players at that position, teams jump on them and elevate them on their board and elevate them on in their financial ledger and their budgeting, because he's basically saying that teams often act out of desperation at that position. And he doesn't like to do that. He doesn't like to panic. Now, what we can all agree on is that maybe they should a little bit. Maybe they should panic a little bit. Maybe they should act out of a little bit of desperation, although I'd use another word, and that's urgency. And I do think, and we'll see how he finishes out the rest of this answer here. I do think, and I've been saying this, if you watch the show, did I just come up with a new slogan? If you watch the show, that I feel like he's been saying that he recognizes that that's the biggest weakness on the roster and it needs to be fixed now.
We talked about the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, like what happened there, right? And they have, that was rough. That was a rough go for those guys. I mean, every team, I would say there's probably about two or three teams that have really good offensive lines. I'm talking college football, pro football, everything, right? So the philosophy is not like we're not gonna like overpay. We probably will because we have to, right?
Right.
But you have to be smart with those decisions, right? So what is the difference in, are we gonna take away? Are we gonna over?
Okay, let me back that up just a second.
Overpay. We probably will because we have to, right?
Hold on.
Two or three teams that have really good offensive lines. I'm talking college football, pro football, everything, right? So the philosophy is not like we're not gonna like overpay. We probably will because we have to, right?
Right.
But you have to be smart with those decisions, right? So
I honestly didn't think we'd hear him say anything like this. If anything, I thought maybe we'd see him be a little bit more defensive, kind of double down on like, hey, we have our philosophy. We're going to stick to it. We're going to stick to the board. We're not going to force anything. We'll take the board as it falls to us and try to address those positions as smartly as we can. This is the most definitively I think we've ever heard him talk about. That's a big problem. We need to fix it. I have a head coach who's telling me every day in my office, we need to fix it. And so we'll probably have to go against that comment I made earlier.
So what is the difference in, are we gonna take away, are we gonna overpay, are we gonna overpay a guard and lose out on a defensive tackle? No, we'd rather pay the player that we think is a better talent. It's kind of like drafting for need, right? In the draft, right? You're going to just, you have to take this player, and then you go right by, you go right by Dave Wyman, who's a better player than the offensive lineman because, I've seen him smash guards.
Hey, hold on. This is the first time he's said something positive.
Oh, slow down there, Sheriff.
Playing ability.
This guy was smash people, man. But yeah, so it's like we talked about supply and demand, and so it's really it's never like a level of like it's not important or like we have this philosophy, but we don't
you don't value them.
Yeah, like I worked with somebody that used to say a guard is a guard is a guard, and you don't pay him. I did work with somebody like that, right, in my past, but that's not the case with us. It's really
okay. I mean, if you haven't heard enough to feel a little bit better, and I'm not asking you all to go, okay, we give him a pass on the last 7 or 8 years. Everything's fine now. He's going to take care of it. I'm not asking you to do that. He still needs to deliver between March 14th or March 12th and the end of April. Needs to deliver. Needs to put his money where his mouth is. But he's speaking a different language now. He's saying different words about the offensive line now. Let's go back and listen to that again, because that, again, wow.
This guy was smash people, man. But yeah, so it's like we talked about supply and demand, and so it's really it's never like a level of like it's not important or like we have this philosophy, but we don't
you don't value them.
Yeah, like I worked with somebody that used to say a guard is a guard is a guard, and you don't pay him. I did work with somebody like that, right, in my past, but that's not the case with us. It's really like, okay, we have to put a value on people on people at the end of the day, and that's just, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it was.
The first place you want to go is like, who's he talking about, right? But it sounds to me like he's talking about when he was coming up before he was a GM, either with the Chiefs or the Packers. But it's pretty crazy that he's admitting that, right?
Really, like, yeah, it's and it happens every year. We see.
He's essentially playing stick to your board, or saying stick to your board. He's saying don't reach for a player because of a perceived position of need over a player that you think is going to have a better career. And that's what he's been saying for 16 years, regardless of position. It's just such a hot button topic because the offensive line has literally held this team back from reaching the playoffs and doing any damage in the playoffs for the last 3 years.
Well, and we'll see it this weekend too. When we go down on the combine, yeah, they'll be like, hey, the guys, this player is we would grade him as a solid backup or a solid starter. There's 2 grades like that. This guy's a solid starter. The guy might be a solid backup in our eyes, but he's going to get paid like a difference maker, which is 2 grades up, right? It's like, whoa, So I don't know if that answered it, but that's.
Yeah,
I'm glad we got that out of the way, though. That was good. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Was that guy Alex Gibbs, by the way?
Alex Gibbs,
because the Schlereth used to tell us when I was with him that he said I can get a bum off the highway to play guard. Give me a tackle.
No,
wasn't him.
No, I can't tell you. Yeah. No, but no.
Yeah, it's just one of those.
But some offensive line coaches would tell you like, yeah, I'll coach this guy up. Like I got, and I'm sure guys that are as talented as Alex would say that. Yeah,
but it's interesting that that's the one position that most people don't understand. You're watching a game,
the
offensive line, and yet it's probably the most desired, right? And probably hardest to find.
Yes.
But yet you get all kinds of criticism, and it's just, I don't know, it's just always like I say, offensive linemen bonded by misery. They only
I can see that, sure.
Yeah, I mean, they only get pointed out. But I mean, when you hear what people are saying and things like that, are you like, no, that's not close? Or, I mean, what people say about offensive line, I mean, it just seems like you sound like you're an expert, but really almost nobody is.
When I watch a game, when I watch us play, I'm watching our offensive line. I'm watching our defensive line, right? Through the binoculars, right? The lens of it.
Right.
That's what I watch. I don't necessarily watch the quarterback's feet and all that kind of stuff. I'm not like, I'm looking like what's happening up front. Okay. And then a defensive line too. So I watch that way back when I'm watching the game live.
Right.
So it's like, what's important? That's what's important, because if that's not going well, nothing else is going well.
And just a reminder again, and some of you have heard me say this, but at the Senior Bowl, the first day, Tuesday, first practice, both sessions, anytime I saw Schneider on the sideline, he was standing where the offensive linemen were working out, doing their drills, their one-on-ones, their positional work, their bag work. He was focused on the offensive line day one. He moved around a little bit more day two from what I saw anytime I looked for him. But he was focused. He's just what he's saying here. He was watching both lines, but also when he was watching individual work, it was the O-lineman.
Yeah. Hey, are you surprised? Maybe you're not. It was probably like this in every city. Quarterback's the most important position. It's the most visible position. But it seems like in this city that Geno Smith is very polarizing.
Here we go.
People love him or they think he's a backup.
Oh, really?
I call him the ultimate gray area guy. I think he's very good. I don't think he's elite. I think he's very good.
Yeah.
Everybody else he's absolute one way or the other. DK to a certain extent is very polarizing as well.
Okay.
Does that surprise you at all? Like, do you feel like they lived up to what you expected last year? That not quite, or are you even aware of how polarizing they are?
No, I'm not. I guess I'm not really aware of that. I mean, the quarterback of your football team is always going to be the most polarizing, probably, right? Sure. And then DK's so talented and explosive and such a he's on TV and commercials and stuff, right? So I could see that. But what was the second part? Sorry.
Well, how did they live up to your expectations last season?
Yeah.
I think that it's interesting to see the back and forth.
DK, was injured, and then we just struggled offensively there for a minute, and he didn't get quite as many targets. He probably should have.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
But I don't know. I don't know how polarizing they are, but and then and I thought especially playing through the injury there at the end. I mean, it really sucked it up.
And you don't listen to the show every day. You're not constantly listening to us.
I'm not in the nest. I'm not in the nest every single day.
I don't know that it's the first lie he's told in this episode, but he's lying. His son Jack tells him everything. He's the social media guy. He's always talking to him about what's being said out there. He knows. I think he's just trying to protect his players and just trying to deflect the question, probably because he's just tired of talking about
it. No.
What's the next thing for you?
The next thing is, getting, like I said, getting a haircut this weekend and reviewing the board. And then, next is the game. You guys gonna watch the game, the hockey game tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that tonight for sure. But then, just getting ready to go down to the combine. We're scheduling all of our meetings tomorrow, and we'll get with the salary cap guys and the.
You can tell he spent time in Mobile this year. Didn't go last year, remember, because he had just hired Mike McDonald. There was work to be done. I think it happened during the Senior Bowl week. Since when does he pronounce meetings? He's done it twice in this episode. He's been spending his time in the South. Maybe scouting LSU and Georgia's offensive lineman a little heavier this year. Was that a tell? Did he just give himself away? Meetings.
Pro guys that set the whole schedule.
Sounds like the haircut's really important.
It really is. I'm feeling pretty scraggly, to be honest with you. So
we asked him about O-line. He's like, well, let me tell you about my hair. Are we talking to you from the combine?
You asked about the weather? No, you asked about the temperature.
All right, that's it. That's they're wrapping it up now. The key takeaways, I think, obviously, are the things that he said again about the offensive line. Now we're 2 episodes in, and the biggest headline is John Schneider acknowledges how much work needs to be done on the offensive line, first of all. acknowledges that mistakes were made, acknowledges that it's a focus, acknowledges that he's aware it's a focus and that they're going to do something about it, and that they may have to act in a certain way that contradicts what many thought he meant last year when he made those comments about the offensive line. I mean, I think that's the biggest takeaway from these first 2 episodes. You know, at the end, they kind of tried to get into Geno and DK. Maybe they were asked not to ask too many questions about that. It sure kind of felt like he was deflecting that. When it came to Geno, he could have easily said, and I've heard him say it at other times, he's been hard on Geno. Certainly when, you know, the first press conference after Pete Carroll was fired, you know, he was pretty hard on Geno. You know, to say he just met expectations and he sucked it up after he was hurt, those aren't his true feelings. He's not just dismissing the 15 interceptions and the poor red zone play, right? It just kind of sounds to me like he just doesn't want to get into it. He just doesn't want to talk about the quarterback anymore. Is that because everything is set in stone, like Mike McDonald made it sound like? Or is it because he's exploring some other things and doesn't want to be sort of emotionally committed to it, or outwardly committed to it? I don't know. But as these shows continue, we'll find out. Next week, there should be an episode because I don't think they'll be at the combine next week. And that's what they were about to ask him is when they'll be talking to him. But also every GM and coach has a press conference while they're in Indianapolis. So unfortunately, I won't be going to Indianapolis this year. Absolutely plan on this being the last one that I miss. But I'll be watching everybody else and here to react to all of it with you, which is a perfect way to remind you all once again that I'll be doing this full time for the next few months. So, and maybe beyond and longer, and you know, depending on just kind of how things go, we're committed to this particular spot we're in right now through the end of April until the draft is over, and then we'll decide what's next. Kind of how well that goes will determine the next step. And you know, the ultimate goal is to be able to do this full time. So I'm really, really looking forward to being able to do it for the next 3 months and reacting to anything on a daily basis. So from now on, Monday through Friday at minimum, I'll be doing shows. I'll be doing live shows Monday through Friday. Now, it won't always be at the same time every day because I have to work, you know, in coordination with my partner and schedules and things like that. So, but I'll try to do the best job I can of scheduling shows out in advance and letting you know who's coming up, what guests are coming up, who's coming up this day and that day, and what those times look like based on just kind of life and schedule and how that stuff works. So, and then around that's not all there's going to be. I will also do some other shorter form pre-recorded shows that'll be more focused and specific, whereas the live shows will often be the interview part of it, talking to other analysts, other podcasters, coaches, players when possible, media members, and just, you know, breaking down every aspect of this offseason as we go through this process. And then some of the shorter form content, you know, focusing on a specific prospect or a specific position group, or we'll get into some free agency stuff next week. And I'll take a look at each major position group and who the ideal free agent fit would be. And then also who the more realistic fit would be. And then tomorrow I'm going to have some fun with this, just for the heck of it. Today I asked AI to do a mock draft for the Seahawks, a 7-round mock draft based on roster needs and available NFL draft prospects. And it was remarkably good. I was not an AI guy. I'm becoming one. I was blown away by this, and it's not the only example, but I thought it'd be really, really fun to go through that and share with you. So look for that tomorrow. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, Blue Sky also. Shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this program. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notification of all future episodes so that you know. So even when the schedule is moving around, you know when I'll be on, because those live shows, I will always take comments and questions. And when I have a guest, you'll be able to ask the guest those comments and questions as well. So I've got a bunch of people on deck. I'll work on lining them all up over the next couple of days, and so I'll have the next couple of weeks scheduled out, and then we'll let you all know who's coming on the show. Really, really appreciate you being patient with me the last 5 or 6 days. Here we go. We're back forever and always. Go Hawks. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.